Nice to be in Melbourne. I came here once before, but that's quite a long time ago. And I was looking up for this talk, and particularly the talk I'm doing tomorrow about Melbourne. And I didn't know that you'd had the Olympic Games here a long time ago, and 1956. And they, when I looked it up, they were called the Friendly Games. That's what they were called at that time. And but of course, Melbourne always has its traditional rivalry with Sydney, and Sydney have had them since. And Sydney Games, was called the best games ever. I mean, everyone talked about the Sydney Games as the very best games ever. That was until last year. Well, okay, that's Sydney. I forgot I put the slide in here, but this fashion did not carry on, did it? That just didn't really work. But until last year when the Olympics came to London, and I think everybody who's involved in the Olympics now thinks that the London Games were absolutely the best games ever. And what I think, we were very, very worried as Brits about the opening ceremony. Beijing had been spectacular, and I don't know if you know this, but sport is the most watched thing on television. But actually the most watched events is the opening ceremony of the Olympics. The opening ceremony and the closing ceremony, and then the 100-metre final. And so the culture around the Olympics, yes, it's a sporting event, but it's a very cultural event. The opening ceremony is bringing together the world in some sort of unique moment where this happens, is actually really, really important. And we had this extraordinary opening ceremony. I don't know how many of you saw it in the UK, but my favourite scene from it was the Industrial Revolution, which, and as Brits, we have this sort of cultural guilt about being British. We had this empire, we did a lot of bad stuff. Maybe we left, I don't know, I think even our educational system we left behind is pretty bad. But anyway, so we forget that this extraordinary thing happened in Britain, and it did happen in Britain, the Industrial Revolution. It was absolutely started in Britain, where a revolution effectively changed the way the whole world worked. And at the very, very heart of that was machines like this, which is the steam engine. This is obviously from the Olympics, but this is a technical drawing of a steam engine. And James Watt was a Scot, and he created the first efficient steam engine. And he was not thinking about building an industrial revolution. He was in his workshop. There's a lot of trendy stuff these days about makers. Very good book by Chris Anderson called Makers Revolution. And that how we need a revolution, how we make things. Very driven by the sustainability agenda and all sorts of things. He was a maker, James Watt. He was asked to repair a steam engine. It was actually a model of a steam engine called the Newcomb steam engine, which was the common steam engine used in coal mines across Britain. They could only be used in coal mines because they used so much coal to drive them that you couldn't really use them in any other situation. But they would pump out the water from the deep mines, and they would open up seams of coal that couldn't otherwise be done. And he was operating at a time when people did not understand that water was what he later came to call it 2 parts air. They did not understand that water was hydrogen and oxygen. They did not understand latent heat, which is the fact that it takes more energy to move water through a different state than other. He was just working in his workshop trying to create a more efficient steam engine. And he was looking at this and he thought this can be much more efficient than what it is. He didn't know what a perfect engine was. He was striving in his lifetime to create a perfect engine, but he didn't know what it was, but he knew it could be more efficient. And at the very core of this, he did lots and lots of innovations, is something here which is a small device in the middle, and it's called the governor. And the governor is the part that controls the amount of steam going into the engine. So those 2 balls come out. As more steam goes in, those 2 balls come out. And that closes the valve and reduces the amount of steam going in, so they close again. And if it closes too much, it opens the valve and it opens again. It's the first example of a real-time feedback mechanism that controlled a machine. People would come from miles around to see governors in action. They were also very smart. They called it a governor. This was marketing. Basically, this was taking the job of the person that used to govern the valves and things like that on the steam engines. They've also used on looms and factories. So he was a very good marketer, James. Well, he also invented the term horsepower, because he wanted to tell the mine owners how many horses they needn't have if they used one of his engines. So he was a very clever marketer as well as his ideas. But why am I showing you a picture of a steam engine about this? Because, and what's it got to do with happiness? And what I want to say is that we are all emotional beings. It's undeniable. Here's a picture from a very famous bit of psychology, 1950s psychology by a guy called Paul Ekman. He took pictures of actors, and he basically had this theory that human beings had a set of primary emotions, a bit like primary colours. And we can all recognise these emotions. And, we've got anger, fear, surprise, disgust, sadness, with a very nice gap in his teeth, happiness. And emotions act as feedback loops in us. They are regulatory systems within us. So when we feel frightened, it's because there's a threat in the environment and we need to respond differently. So we are sensitive to changes in the environment and we respond accordingly. When we're angry, it's because a norm has been violated and we respond to that. Some people do it with violence, some not. Disgust is obviously spit out. Sadness is a natural functional system within human beings. So grief is a natural human function. It's basically about saving energy and waiting for conditions to improve. It actually helps us make wiser choices over the medium term. If you've just lost your partner, it would not be functional to run around with high energy and try and find a new one straight away. That wouldn't be the best strategy. It actually pays us to take time and to reflect. And happiness is also functional. Our positive emotions are functional in new ways. I just want to check what my next slide is. Just remember. Happiness is about, so an emotion like enthusiasm. How has that helped us? I mean, these have all got evolutionary purposes. How has that helped us evolve, survive over the years? Well, even before we had language, it would have been very important for a tribe of humanoids to communicate that there was some animal to hunt or some berries, suddenly a new bush of berries to be harvested. And enthusiasm would be a way of mobilizing energy both for yourself and for the group around you. Interest is about focusing on a short-term task that's got medium and long-term benefits. Contentment is about, or satisfaction, is about a reflective process to take the learnings out of an achievement so you can repeat them. These are all highly functional things. And the big thing about the so-called positive emotions is that they're much more about opportunities. The negative emotions like fear is about part of the flight mechanism. Anger is part of the fight mechanism. Happiness, enthusiasm, interest, those sort of positive emotions are about creating and seizing opportunities. You can immediately see implications for business world. If it's not just about threats, yes, businesses can face threats. It's important to listen to that information, but they also need to create opportunities. In tech businesses these days, it's innovate or die. So it's like we need to be innovative, and our positive emotions are very like that. And they're acting like internal feedback loops. They respond to key information, and they trigger positively adaptive functions. That's why they've evolved over the time. But not only that, what's interesting about the emotions is that we can all see what those emotions are. So we can read them straight away. I mean, actually, you might not know, but I've got a bit of pain in my left knee at the moment. But you don't know, because you can't see that. But you can see these. And why did we do that? Probably because emotions are pre-language, and that they were a way that we communicated, and we continue to communicate with each other by our facial expressions about what we're feeling. And they are contagious. If someone smiles, you tend to smile back at them. And they're actually very, very contagious. So we coordinate our emotions, whether they're good or bad emotions. If everyone's sad around us, we tend to sit around and we mimic people's body posture around us. We mimic people's accents around us. If I stay in Australia too long, I'll start having a twang. But we do all this stuff to sort of fit in with the group. We share emotions. It actually looks slightly mad when we laugh on our own. And it's one of the confusing things about having these, things in our ears, is you hear people laughing and they're walking along on their own. They look kind of weird. And then you realise they're on the phone and they're laughing with a friend a long way away. But we laugh much more with other people. We smile much more with other people. These are ways that we absolutely connect with other human beings. And so, so it becomes hugely, hugely important to... If you think about organisations as systems of people, actually the systems of people go miles and miles beyond the sort of organogram of, the hierarchical organogram of an organisation. The person who sits on the front desk welcoming people may be the most important person for happiness at work. Maybe they should be called the director of first impressions rather than, receptionist, because that's, the person that picks up the phone, the secretary, the person you want to speak to, the customer service people. That's often the only place that a customer has contact with a voice of an organisation. So the CEO might be fantastic, but if they've got grouchy people who are answering the phones, that's going to be people's impressions of them. So in all sorts of ways, that happiness at work is really, really important. And I can actually, the connection, say, for happiness at work to word of mouth marketing, that, if you've got someone that's happy at work, that they sell something to somebody, then that person's much more likely to say this organisation is great, and they do the marketing for you. So one of the things about it is happiness at work is really important, and there's a key question is, does happiness come from high performance? If we think this is true, we're in the normal paradigm that we all live in, which is that if you work hard, you will be happy. Actually, happiness is kicked into retirement. Work for 40 years and you can retire happily. It's kicked into the weekends. Work hard all week, you can play on the weekend. Religions actually kick it into the afterlife. If you're good in this life, you'll have a better life next time. I think we should have it now. But, so this is the sort of dominant thing, and this is sort of stuff I've done work on over the last, 10, 15 years with NEF, which is that, if high performance of a nation is GDP, does happiness just flow from GDP? Is an interesting question. It doesn't particularly. Or does happiness lead to high performance? Now that's interesting. If you're happier, will you do better? Will you make your own luck in life? There's a lot of work on luck at the moment, and how actually you create your own luck. There's logical things to think about that. If I smile at you, it means you can approach me. Suddenly more opportunities come my way. There's this one piece of research which just looks at college students about whether they smiled in their college photograph. Just looking 10 years later at classic things like salary, marriage, all these ways that we think about it, the people who smile were more likely to do all of those things, more likely to have happier marriages, higher jobs they preferred, all sorts of things. In a way, their happiness, it's a very crude measure of it, whether they smiled or not, but it's enough, just that idea is enough to pick up sensitive data. There's also lots of links to happiness leads to health. That actually happier people, you can infect people with a mild flu bug, and the people who are happier are less likely to get the flu than the people that are unhappy. And we all know that. We get stressed, we get sick. These things are very, very interconnected. Or is it both of these things? So I want to show you one piece of research tonight. I've got lots more I can show you, but here's one. This is from Gallup. Gallup have got lots and lots of data. There's 140,000 people in this study, 2,000 teams, 11 organizations. They looked at happiness at time 1 and performance at time 1, and happiness at time 2. So is the relationship like this? Happiness leading to performance? Is it performance leading to happiness? Is it both? Well, the research showed that both models fitted the data. That means statistically fitted them. You could explain the data statistically with both of them. But model 1 was a much better fit. And so much so that the researchers, and these are Gallup researchers, these are not the most radical guys in the world, these data suggest that the impact of happiness at work on performance is twice as large as from performance to happiness at work. Twice as large, that effect. And yet you think how many firms, how many businesses try and drive performances, and they say, we will reward you with more pay, and basically they're saying there's carrots at the end of this that you're going to enjoy if you work hard now. And if you flip that the other way round, you change everything. It changes. I mean, I think, staff engagement, a lot of people talk about staff engagement. If you ask me honestly, the statistical relationship between happiness at work and staff engagement, very strongly related. Very strongly related. Ask me psychologically how people take the word engagement as to how they take the word happiness. Totally different. Engagement feels like, what do you want to get out of me? How can I get you to go an extra mile for this organisation? It's the organisation's agenda. They want to get more out of you for paying you the same amount of money. If you talk about happiness, how can we create a great job for you? It's suddenly the organisation giving you something. And the psychological contract that is in the employment contract, the unwritten part of the contract, has totally changed. And then the organisation needs to trust that performance will flow out of that. Well, this Gallup data and there's lots of other data will suggest that that is true. And that changes the way that we work altogether. And it needs changing because here's something from Business Week, an investment magazine in the States. The management are focused on employees to the detriment of shareholders. Why would I want to buy a stock like that? And what I want to tell you is this analyst, I think he is ignorant. I'm sure it's a he. I don't think it's a woman. Because this is the company he's talking to about, which is Costco. And I'm not a fan of big supermarkets, okay? So I'm not saying that, we want big supermarkets. But one thing you can say about Costco is they come in the Great Place to Work list in the States very regularly. And the CEO says here, I happen to believe that in order to reward the shareholder in the long term, I think we're up on this long-term, short-term thing that we often find, you have to please your customers and your employees if you want to reward the shareholder in the long run. Now, Costco's one company. Probably a better example is this one, Zappos. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's an online shoe company in the States. It's like the Amazon of shoes and apparel, actually, they will say. They don't just do shoes. But this is Tony Hsieh. He's their CEO. He was their second employee. In 1999, he joined as their second employee. And Zappos was sold to Amazon 11 years later for $1.5 billion. Okay, online is growing, but online shoes? I mean, don't you try on shoes? It's like, how do they do that? They basically did amazing things for the customer, like a 365-day return policy. Why does he do that? He said because only 0.5% of people abuse that. And we know who they are anyway, so we don't sell to them again. So, so why get at the 99.5% with bad service when you can deal with people who want to take advantage of that, one by one. They are basically a warehouse and a call centre and an emailing answering thing and an ordering system, some ordering or whatever. But basically, there's a lot of call centres, a lot of emails. Call centres are one of the most regulated, as in self-regulated by organisation, jobs that can be. There's lots of scripts, there's not much autonomy, nothing. Here's 2 rules for people answering the phone. Number 1, be yourself. Number 2, use your judgment. They have nothing on about how many calls you must take an hour. So the longest call on record is 8.5 hours. Okay? Why does he let that happen? Because for him, you're speaking to a customer. You pay a lot of money to try and advertise to people. You're speaking to one. They just rung you up. Speak to them as a human being. These are the people that will buy from you again, that will recommend it to your friends. He's got smart business at the centre of everything he does. Australia has it. So Atlassian, do any of you know this company? Software company. You should do. Two of the richest Australians under the age of 40 founded this company. I think they're worth something like $400 million, the two of them. Founded only about 8-10 years ago. 5 rules they live by: open company, no bullshit, build with the heart and balance, don't fuck off the customers, what it says, play as a team, be the change that you seek. And they really do that all over their website. People like this who work at Atlassian, and they just let people be themselves, and they know they will do good work. I mean, can you imagine a bank employing someone like him? But why not? If he's great, why not? So, the Great Place to Work list, also, you can look at the effect on the stock market. So we talked at the beginning about that, equity guy saying, why would I invest this? Well, here's a piece of research which shows that if you just took the 100 people listed in that company and you invest your dollars at the beginning of the year in that 100 list, then at the end of the year, you would end up outperforming the market by between 2 and 4%. Every year since 1985. That does not mean to say those companies are going to last forever. There have been companies in the Great Place to Work list that have gone bankrupt, that have gone blind, whatever. But if you just invest in the beginning of the year and then you take your money out at the end of the year, that's how much better you will do. So actually, the guy who said at the beginning, that why would he invest in that? Well, he's stupid, because he would like 2.5 better than market rate, thank you very much, on his returns. And he would get it if he listened to a list like that. And, this guy, Alex Edmonds, is really very into the CSR agenda, and he thinks that the best performing organisations are outperforming the stock market, and he's starting to gather evidence on that. And this is one of the ways he does it. So happiness works. There's more innovation, there's higher performance, there's greater shareholder value, there's lower absenteeism, staff turnover, talent attraction, increased word of mouth recommendations, all sorts of things. But somehow it's not mainstream. It still seems a cookie idea. It still seems, are we really going to do that? Do we dare to do that? And so this is me, as a statistician, it's a strategy for trying to bridge that gap between what there's evidence for and what there is not action about. And here's something I think needs innovation. The dreaded staff survey. Everybody dreads the staff survey. They often come in forms like this. Some of them are better applications, but they've got all sorts of problems. So in the UK, we did some research. 50% of people had done a staff survey in the last 3 years, but 80% of them thought it had made no difference to their working life at all. So companies are spending a lot of money on their staff surveys. They're sort of addicted to repeating them every year because they think the numbers are important. But they're not actually making any positive difference. So what are they doing? Are they just measuring themselves staying the same? I mean, what's the point of that if it is not provoking things? And there's lots of reasons why. Some of it is the wrong questions. Is that I actually think you are an expert in your experience at work, so let me ask you that. Why am I asking you questions about whether you think the leadership strategy is good? That's your perception of it. Actually, your experience is what you're an expert of. You're going to get much stronger results, data, if you ask people about what they know about. Bad user experiences. The interfaces are bad, the bits of paper are horrible, they're ugly, don't give people a nice experience. No feedback. When you do a Cosmopolitan magazine, it says mostly A's are this, mostly B's are this, mostly C's are this. You want the feedback, that's fun. Why don't you give people's feedback straight away? 6 weeks, 8 weeks till a report. Survey finishes, takes a long time. They're using an academic model. We are the experts, we will come in, we will survey you, like looking at you like you're some sort of specimen. And then we will go away and we will give you our expert opinions, and that takes us a certain amount, and we'll give you this report. And if you want another report, you'll pay more for it, and another one more. Okay, it's actually a con. The whole thing is a statistical con. They just run scripts that they've written before in SPSS, and they make up their reports afterwards. I don't mean to make them up as in they're not lies, they're perfectly valid statistical things, but as in they build them up. Well, you can just do that in real time if you have the discipline to program everything. Chung, instant. That's the amazing thing about the web. The statistics are too complicated. They make managers do a lot of work. They say 64% of people this. The industry average is 56%, and the manager's working through this, trying to work out, are we better? Is it better than last year? Not. Give people simple to understand numbers. You know, managers are numerate, but really they're interested in how do we compare to other people? How do we get better? Virtually all the other statistical questions that me as a statistician might worry about, the second decimal place and all sorts of other things, I should do for them and just present them those two bits of information. If they want more, they can come and get more, but they want those two headline bits. And there's not enough consistent follow-up and follow-through from management on the results. And part of that is this huge lag. The governor in the steam engine did not go out and then think, okay, tomorrow we'll put less coal in because it didn't work properly today. It worked in real time to do that. So if you want staff engagement, staff happiness, staff well-being, whatever you want to call it, to improve, you need to get more and more real time. So as soon as a survey closes, have the results. And that's what we're doing. Obviously, here's one I made earlier. You know, so Happiness Works is starting to innovate in this space. So you have surveys which are nicely presented. They're fun to do. This yellow bit swooshes down, always tells you where you are. You get the results back of yourself absolutely immediately. As soon as the survey closes, every team gets their own results. Teams are underused as a way of a change mechanism. Everything sits in the HR department, the CEO's office. Well, actually, there's three ways that change. People can change themselves, teams can change together, and the organisational system can change. All of those are important. Everybody gets the data straight away afterwards, and you start to do that. So the opportunity is the survey, Happiness at Work survey. In lots of ways, it's easier done than said. I can talk to you about it, how it works, but you can try it for free. So all of our tools are free for individuals to use. Every internet business has to have what they now call in America the freemium version, where you give away everything free at the heart of what you do. In fact, it's even free for small teams of up to 5 people, and then there's a small charge per person from then on. So you can just try it out. But I want to remind you one thing. So the Dalai Lama's in town today, and there's this old Chinese saying, which is that the finger that points to the moon is not the moon. And our indicators are just pointing at happiness at work. They are not happiness at work itself. They are indicators of it. So what creates happiness at work is sort of the conversations and the insights that can be had in an organisation and how to change it. And so the goal of this is insights and how they're acted on. And that's how change will happen in your organisation, in this organisation, in the world of organisations, is only when insights are discovered and they are acted upon and they change. That the governor is at work here. It is taking information, it is adapting in real time to signals in the environment, which is just like how our emotions work as a thing. And then we can start to create happiness insight engines. I haven't quite worked out what to call this yet, but we need to find something which is a bit like the governor. So this is one of our ways we feed back our data, and it quite amuses me. It looks a bit like that. And so then if we're going to create the next revolution, then we can start to use these tools, and I would say the next revolution needs to be happier. Thank you very much.